Hey, and we're back here talking about what is new and useful, and what lessons we can take from what we're now calling MCP apps. Adding user interface experiences to MCP servers for AI. I'm Ray Deck. I'm the founder of State Change, where we work on hard problems around AI-based development, and helped out here with Encore as well. And I'm very pleased to be joined by Toby Oliver, who is the CEO of Encore. And I'll let you introduce yourself, Toby.
Yeah, hi, I'm Toby, CEO of Encore. We're looking to try and help people figure out the best way of understanding and using these new MCP apps. And before that, I was using Bravo, where we thought about design a lot. So I'm really interested to see how we can, use these things in the best possible way. And I'll hand over to JC.
Hey everyone, I'm JC. I'm a product designer and developer, and I'm also working in Encore to, basically see what's happening. My job right now is understand what's happening with all these ChatGPT and MCP apps world right now.
Super cool, man. So what do you got for us today?
All right, so today I thought it would be cool to do a brief demo on one of the ChatGPT apps that are available today. So the one I picked for today is Spotify. Everyone knows Spotify. Everyone knows the capabilities and limitations, or the features. So we're gonna go through a flow together. Mm-hmm. We're gonna see how the app reacts to what we tell GPT, and then we're gonna try to extract some insights and learnings, and hopefully some discussions come out of it. So if that sounds good, I will now share my screen.
Super cool.
And what we want to do first when we're using a ChatGPT app is, at least for now, we need to connect it, right? So I have it already connected. We can maybe focus on the flow once I have connected my account, so we don't go through that. But basically, I have the start chat button already enabled for me here. So what I do is I just go here, and now if we try to remember the principles of the modes of work that we discussed in the previous episode, we're going to be looking at the different modes of work the user can be in if we look at our user journey. So we're going to be on exploratory mode, constraining mode, comparing mode, creating mode, and commitment mode, right? Differ, we're not going to focus on this one for now. So what I will do is I will just basically tell ChatGPT, I'll start the conversation with this message. What have I been listening to lately? And let's see what it does, and we go from there.
Okay.
All right, so at this point, what's interesting is it is surfacing right away the basically the UI, so different songs that I've been listening to. And looks like I've been listening to a lot of ambient and meditation and binaural phase lately. Nice. And then it ends up with a confirmation about what I wanted to know, right? Like it says, if it matches your current vibe, I'd probably describe your recent listening as deep work, mindfulness, background for designing and thinking. It knows a bit about me, so that's also interesting. Right, so it answers my question with a mix of UI and text. So now if I try to constrain a bit, and I want to know just what I've been listening to in the last 4 weeks, what I'm expecting here is that it either exactly surfaces the UI and just filters it down to what I asked. Because right now it's showing me insights, so it's in insight mode. It's showing me data in different ways and formats. So I can see some things change here. So I can see they're not the same the same songs. So that's that confirms that this is what I was expecting. And it of course asks me to, well, if I want to refine further, we can go with any of these options. So for now, what I'll do is I'll keep trying to go through our user journey, and now I have constrained a bit. Now I want to compare. Maybe I want to compare to what I listened to, let's say, in the last 3 months. And let's see what it does here. So far, what I can see is that Spotify is able to combine both. Oh, that's interesting. So before we dive into this, what I can see is that it's able to combine effortlessly and in a nice looking way the UI and the text, right, to give me the information I'm looking for. So when I try to compare what I listened in the last 3 months, seems like couldn't find a match. Okay, and then it falls back to text, which is an intelligent way to basically handle this. A lot of the other apps that I've been testing, they either just focus on showing the UI or showing text, and they don't always combine both in the best way. So here, this is failing. It's a failed state for me, but it's giving me different options, so I can go on with my flow, right? So I think that's interesting. Let's look at something a bit more I think magical, in my opinion, in terms of the UX, and I think this is where Spotify is doing a really great job. So I'm gonna try to create something, right? So for now, we could say create a simple breakdown of my listening. We can go with something like this that filters down the data much further. But I think what would be interesting is if we can have Spotify create a playlist for me. So I will say create a playlist for me based on my current listening, my current latest songs, and include flamenco and jazz vibes. So right now I'm in creation mode. I'm expecting Spotify to create something, a visual artifact, but also something that I will find, in this case, in my Spotify account, right? So when I go back to Spotify, I'm expecting to have this handed off to the app. So to me, this is the really magical step when I ask for something to create something, and it just gives me exactly what I'm looking for. So flamenco, jazz fusion, there's a playlist. I can see that I have this playlist here. Seems like I can add this to my account. So if I go and do that, it says add it to your library. Let's see what happens later when we go back to Spotify, to the desktop app. But here we can see there's already different things happening. So we have the actual artifact that has been created for me based on my prompt, which is what I wanted. We can see some actions. So there's some interactions happening. This is not what's happening in every other GPT app. So in this case, Spotify has done, in my opinion, a really good job at having very simple UI and interactions, but that really do the work and really meet me where I'm at in my user journey. So then some text telling me what it did. So that's pretty good. And then there's the commit part to it, where I want to say something like I want to use this as my current listening profile. So I want to save this as a profile for my Spotify. And here, what it does, it tries to meet me halfway and say, okay, I'll treat this playlist as your current listening profile going forward. But in reality, the app is not able to do anything here. So it just basically agrees with me, but doesn't do any action deeper than this. But that's fine for now. So I think this is
one thing I just want to ask you, what I mentioned that I think is interesting from what I saw is that they don't use a lot of UI in this. Their UI is basically a list of songs, and the only thing's different is in the playlist they add a title to it. So there's not a lot of UI in this, but they're using it in a really effective way. I mean, a lot of this is responding in text, and there's opportunity probably for a lot more UI. I mean, I guess Spotify was one of the launch apps, so they probably didn't have time to do a lot with it, but they're doing it effectively. It's working well. But yeah, things like the comparison side and doing some of the other sort of actions probably could be enhanced by having more UI there. I think there's an opportunity to really leverage the apps that maybe they're not doing just yet, but that could really make a lot of value out of just straightforward text potentially.
It's funny. You've got a very front-end perspective on this, Toby. I've got a very back-end perspective on this. And I look at this, I think it shows how much power there is in like very little back-end. I look at this and think it almost feels like they're trying to justify having the block in here. When I think what you really want to have, I look at this and think the thing that's really valuable is just showing a player, right? To have the player be in your ChatGPT that's the UI element that really matters, because that allows you to elevate whatever insights you're getting as you're having the conversation into, the musical experience, that you're looking to have. I think of that in terms like the create, right? Principle, right? That you've talked about before, JC, right? And then there's the inspect principle, right? The I in your ICE framework, which is showing us, hey, here's a list of songs. I can see that being like giving me a proposed list of songs. Right, in fact, it does do this. It gives the proposed playlist, but giving more information about it, more of a flavor, a little bit to Toby's point, being able to have this be a little bit more graphical in the way that it shows, but it doesn't need to be a lot for it to be successful. To be showing me the kinds of things that I like, right, and sort of mixing in. So like this idea of like the UI staying small as I'm going through having the experience. Makes sure that like they can relatively cheaply create an experience custom to me, and that's what the value is of the text. And then actually, I look at this and think, wow, I want Suno after this, right? I want, based on what I listen on Spotify, to be able to say, let's make songs that are just for me, because you can sort of imagine how the inspect on one can lead to like the create on the other, or the execute on the other. Anyway, as I look at it, I think that's going to be one of the really interesting things as we go through more of this, is sort of an observation of like, where is there opportunity for more UI, and where does it show how you can be creating maybe even better experiences with less UI?
It's interesting. The one thing I was thinking about that is what you said. The only challenge with a player is it's in a sort of moving conversation. I mean, I guess the player would work in picture-in-picture, where it kind of pops out. But in terms of, you don't really want the player, and I guess that lends itself to a bunch of other experiences, right? I mean, you don't really want to have something that has continual behavior moving off the screen as part of the earlier conversation. I mean, all these, each of these is like a step in time, but a player is continue acting, and so it needs to be separate from the conversation and float above it. So it kind of creates these different behaviors when you're thinking of the overarching thing being a conversation. In terms of how you interact with it.
That's a really interesting point. Makes the open with Spotify button a really interesting part of this too, right? Because to your point, like get this thing that might be transient, which is this piece of UI, but get it into something that can be more asynchronous, right? In the form of getting this over into the Spotify app. Super cool. This is so neat, JC. Let's keep going here.
No, I think this is great point. So I agree with you that the UI right now it's quite simple as to what it does and what it allows you to do, and probably the main, of course, action in Spotify is to listen to a track, right? So it is probably I don't know if it's a conscious action that they didn't include it here, or maybe there are some technical constraints, as you were saying, or maybe they tested it and it doesn't really render the right way, being in chat and everything. But I think what they do really right is that they, within the whatever constraints they have, they are able to just focus the user on a very specific action, and then they give the user a very specific CTA that so they can hand off the experience to the more, let's say, powerful app, which is their Spotify desktop or mobile app. So I think that is something that I haven't seen that a lot in other apps. They either fail at directing the user to one specific action, or they don't have the affordances for the user to take any action at all, right? So here there's probably an opinion on what actions they want to surface from the experience. So it's adding, so creating and adding something, in this case the playlist, and then opening in Spotify, so you can continue there. I think that's it's really clean. I think it really works well. And as we said, like the combination of both text and UI is, I think, what makes this really shine, because again, just comparing to other apps, what you usually see is that UI with no context doesn't tell me much. So I'm not able to know what to do here with just an UI. But if Spotify is telling me, hey, this is what we put together, and then if you want to add something, if you want to tweak it, you can do this. So it gives me follow-up steps. So I think they did a really good job here. Now, as you were also talking, I was trying to see the other actions that I could take. So you were saying we could, for example, want to listen to this track, right? Like probably I want to know if this is right, because this is not flamenco, right? So I'm like, okay, maybe this is not what I want. So if I try to click on it, it takes me to the web version where I'm guessing I need to log in. Well, there's some friction here.
Oh, it doesn't open your app. Okay, interesting.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't open my app, right? So if I go Spotify, okay. So well, it has the native kind of permission thing. So if which I guess is fair, right? Right. So this is for me, this is a wow moment where I'm like, okay, it actually created this whole artifact with over, like 30 songs, and I can see it here. I can see it on my phone. That this is, to me, this is great, and the fact that it created that in under what, like 2 minutes. So now I'm guessing if I go here, it will open. Yeah, now it opens the app, right? So let's go back to our conversation. But there are still a few things that I think as a user in this creation mode, and as I'm sparring with Spotify, I would like to see. So for example, again, I would like to know if this is the right song. If it's not the right song, Spotify is making a conscious decision here. It's saying, this is what we created for you. If this is not right, then you can always go to Spotify and change it or tweak it, or you can continue in the conversation, right? And we can tweak it together.
Actually, that's a really interesting point, right? I mean, for example, if you don't like a song, this is the sort of interface where you want to be able to like downvote it in the UI, right? That would be the perfect thing to add to it, to really enhance what the UI is doing by giving a bit more control on the UI, because you're having to type the text in, I don't like that song, is really inefficient. Whereas when you're displaying graphically, there is some things in there. There's a lot more sort of touches that they can add to this to make it and really enhance it, I think. And one other thing I should mention, I think the other thing that always worth bearing in mind, where this stuff is going to become super valuable, is where they start to chain together, like Ray was talking about, going like, this is my playlist, I like this type of influences that can then feed into Suno. And I think what my guess is that the way people really start to pull these things together is when the outputs of one are really valuable to go to another one. And so, what you surface in terms of this content, you've got to think about how can people use this in other ways? How can they remix this data in a different app? So, that's where I think the app stuff is going to become really interesting, and people do all sorts of crazy stuff. So, I think whenever you build these sorts of these types of apps, you've got to think about what's the best thing, not just for how do I interface with it right now, but then how do then people take that and do something else with it to really get extra value from.
Definitely. So I think that is, if we go back to our modes of work in our whole flow, this is what I'm calling the defer or handoff mode, right? Like as we think through the whole UX of a ChatGPT or an MCP app, we need to really focus on or give this a thought. What happens when the experience here is done, or what happens with the different basically interaction points in the app, not only on the UI but also with the chat. What happens then? What does this mean for your products in other surfaces, like on web, on the desktop app, on your mobile app? So all those things I think really really shine if you are able to define the whole flow end to end, and it doesn't feel confusing. So yeah.
Super cool.
Nice.
All right.
Well, that's me as a consumer.
Yep. So I wanted to check on the insights that we had,
Sure.
see if anything has changed or arose from this conversation. But basically, to me, the interesting part or the interesting bits are, the insights come before the creation. So when in the case of me asking, give me everything that I listened to in the last month, it showed me, but it didn't create any artifact, right? So it's just it's always helping me understand my behavior and my data. Then I think the rest we already went through them. Is there anything else that was surprising or confusing or striking to you?
Toby, what surprised you?
I mean, I'm just reiterating the point. I'm surprised how they didn't really use the UI as much as I thought they would. I mean, Spotify is a very graphically intensive app. There's a lot going on there. I don't know if they didn't have time or they were consciously trying to keep it super clean in the ChatGPT app. But I'm surprised there weren't more of those touches coming through in this, because it's a great opportunity for them to kind of, help kind of use the power that's not text to help people do some behaviors. So that was the thing I was not expecting. But there could be other reasons for that aren't that could be causing that.
And right.
I was just going to say that, like, the thing that surprised me, but perhaps shouldn't have, as we think about the nature of audio, right, is that audio. I mean, audio is always a very tricky thing to work with in tech, because it runs, it takes time to run, right, and therefore it doesn't work great with like an event-driven system, right? So like I click and I click and I click and I click. Audio is sort of weird because it kind of wants to run on its own beat over time. And as far as signal processing in audio is often much harder to work with than even video, because video is usually always taking your primary concern, whereas audio is more of a backgrounder. So when I think about like how Spotify is working, it's like what they're doing is they're taking the most visual elements, which is the playlist, right? They're putting that front and center. They're helping you sort of understand or think about the way that you have music. And then, I think the thing that I should have been looking for, and like it sort of comes out at the end, is open in Spotify. I think open Spotify becomes the key to it, because it's the way that, like, having done the investigation phase, right, that you were talking about before, how do we actually commit to this? How does it actually create value for the customer? Is by bringing it into this app that runs at a different pace than your work in here. I can see somebody doing their work, they're like got a little bit of inspiration. They're saying, you know what? I want to listen to something different while I'm thinking about this particular problem. And now they can set that up. They can click. It makes a playlist for them. They can go open it up. They can go open in Spotify, but really kick it to Spotify, right? It's like forking it to a background thing. And then the foreground things are sort of sitting in here. And like, I think Toby's point was really eye-opening for me, that like, you wouldn't want to do that inside the chat because of the ephemerality, right, of the way things flow. Like, you're going to lose context and all that stuff. But by kicking it over the Spotify app, it shows how the app is creating value right, in a way that is very complementary to the way that ChatGPT works. So like it actually sort of shows that the Spotify app remains necessary, although I wonder how many of the UI elements of Spotify remain necessary, right? Because this is, I guess, to like Toby's point about cleanliness. Like maybe there's just more that you can and want to do in this flow. And then the real job of the Spotify app is as a player, right? So that it can be doing that which audio does, which is play at a beat that's going to be different from the work that you're doing, so that you can be, keeping your mind in tune to be able to keep on doing the things you're trying to be doing in here. So like it's just getting me thinking differently, right? About what's the role of the UI, what are we doing in the flow, what does it kick to out of the flow, and how do things work at different paces?
Yeah, that's an
Interesting.
interesting point. I do wonder. So right now it's early days for all of these apps. So
Yeah.
of course, you also have mentioned to me that MCP UI, the whole framework or way of developing MCP apps is much larger in terms of what it can do, right, than what we are seeing on ChatGPT apps. So, do you think that this is just because it's early days for, in this case, GPT app? So the companies that have published a GPT app today, they are somehow constrained by time or resources or maybe even limitations by OpenAI, or might it be just deliberate, like they are not choosing to play the song, for example, here, or to allow people to do way more actions for UX or UX reasons?
I mean, I think, well, from my perspective, the thing that I would say is that it's trying to, I guess there's a bunch of those things basically together. I imagine that this was constrained because it was one of the first launch ones. Also, probably they want to see how people use this. I mean, at the end of the day, most of this is about, I mean, Spotify as a service is really trying to help people listen to music where they want to listen to it, right? So there could be an argument for having ChatGPT, but there's not much about it that makes it a useful interface to do that with. I mean, the primary current way of talking to ChatGPT is through text. And so therefore, the impression I get is that they wanted to do things that kind of lend themselves to that. So talking about playlists is perfect. I like this kind of music, I don't like this kind of music. That kind of thing is not easy to do. It's straightforward in a graphical user interface. Text is quite good for that sort of thing. So maybe they were just experimenting with this. But there's going to be, I would imagine, I mean, Spotify is a really smart organization. So I imagine they had a lot of people thinking about this. My best guess is that they just want to do something straightforward and then sort of iterate on it and learn and see how people use it more than anything else. But what do you think, Ray?
Yeah, I think there's just a lot that we don't know yet about how people want to work with this, right? The the ChatGPT itself is like only 3 years old. The whole idea of this flow being a primary way of working is very, very new, and has gotten much bigger and more interesting in the course of the last 12 months. And then they introduced these. This is like really the first time that we've had a significant number of people, probably measured in the low millions, using this technology, using these kinds of UI widgets at all. And it's kind of like the early days of the App Store. The early days of the App Store, people didn't know how it was going to be used. If you look at those early apps, a lot of them are really crappy. And we discovered the kinds of things that were important, right? Like Uber would not have been possible without the App Store, because it required being able to have the geolocation, have the thing with you, being able to have the interface to be able to describe, to be able to do the hailing. But I'm not sure anyone sort of, on day one of, the App Store coming out knew that this was going to be, a key useful application. So I think there's a lot of, we certainly these are smart people, but they don't know what the value is yet. And I think there's, and I think we should keep that in mind for ourselves, right? It's like that we don't know yet what value is going to be for these customers, or for these vendors, really. And we're just trying to learn the insights, right? That's the reason why we're doing this, right? By doing this kind of comparison stuff, we start learning more principles. We're able to see what's being done well, what isn't being done well, and we can start put together like what are the ideas of like what good looks like through various hints from these various vendors, and seeing where the puck is going. And I think the other thing that Spotify does, if I just might make one final point on this, is that the Spotify, as opposed to like the one we looked at last time, but one we looked at last time, Adobe, is a professional application, right? Maybe it's prosumer, but it's for getting work done. This isn't. This is very much about consumption. You're not creating. I made a line about Suno before, but Suno is a creative platform. This is not about that. This is just about consuming. This is about how to help you find more things that you want to consume. And like that sort of, we should take away from that. Like there's these differences in jobs to be done and some hints along the way. And I actually think it'd be great for us maybe like in a couple of months to come back and like do the re-review of Spotify, right? How has Spotify changed? So we can start to draw a line through it and see it not just as, hey, here's one point among many, but here's a vector, right? That's moving its way through time. So I'm really excited about this. I'm so glad you did this here, JC.
The one thing actually I think would be interesting, touching on what we talked about earlier, I think what would be really cool for MCP UI to have is the ability to dock windows, like for example, a player. Imagine you could have that dock to the left of the screen or something. So you could, for information or interfaces that you want to keep around, you don't want to have to keep scrolling back to get to. So like a picture-in-picture that's permanent. I think, because there's going to be situations like whether it's for a Spotify player or a ticker symbol or something where you want to have real-time information or something continually updating you in amongst the rest of the conversation. So, I mean, again, lots of stuff that could happen, but I think there's going to be, it's going to be interesting to see where all this stuff goes. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, like some of what you're describing is in like what, as of this recording, like we're starting to see with like Claude Cowork, in terms of that kind of, creating widgets and like how does that work in a way that's less complicated than having it in the IDE. Like this is, you're asking all the right questions here, Toby.
And
cool.
I think another interesting point is as we compare this to the App Store in the early days, of course there are mobile apps that cannot be, or the main use case and jobs to be done that they are solving for cannot happen elsewhere, right? Like, they need to happen on a native mobile app. So we only saw that once the App Store was live, and then different companies and developers starting like putting things out there. So what I bringing it back here today, what I see in these MCP apps, in this case GPT apps, is that we are basically kind of force feeding, or the apps that are right here right now, they're force feeding an existing product that exists somewhere else, on a desktop app or a mobile app or a web app, and they are force feeding it into this framework, right? So I wonder, or I suspect that there will be a lot of different apps that rather than making an outside product work within this framework, they will start here, right? This will be the product. So that's where maybe different interactions that we don't even know about yet. Maybe this in-view kind of a permanent widget, as Toby was saying, or a lot of different things that we don't know about will start to emerge. And I think that's going to be interesting to keep an eye out for these things.
Super cool, man. All right. Well, JC and Toby, thank you so much. This has been just an awesome session here today. And for people who are watching, please, do the whole like and subscribe thing, because it helps other people find us. And we will keep on doing our exploration of like what is new and novel in the world of AI and user experience. Thanks so much, gents. We'll do this again soon.